Hello, friends. Welcome to this video. We're going to talk about joint movements and planes of motion. So let's look at joint movements. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of the joint movements, but some basic ones that as a person that wants to plan an exercise program should know. So we'll start with the shoulders. All right, so I just want you to be familiar with terms like flexion, extension, abduction, adduction. So when we think about the shoulder, which has a lot of mobility, when we lift our shoulder up, this is extension. When we bring it down, when we bring the arm down, that's extension. So flexion and extension. Flexion and extension. So when we're going to do a program, a workout program, we want to make sure that those movements are included in our program with load when we're ready, meaning like weights. Then the arm goes away from the body and then it comes in. So this would be abduction. And this is I'm bringing it toward me, adduction. So abduction, adduction, flexion, extension. So we also can rotate. We can rotate the arm. So I'm going to put it just like this. I can go back. That's external rotation. And I can come this way, and that is internal rotation. Like this, or we could also go like this or this way. So those are some of the major things, movements of the shoulder. So just to give you an example, I can do front raises. I can grab weights and bring them up and I'm flexing. So generally, when we go down toward the floor, we're not including that as a strength part of the workout in many cases because gravity is pulling us down. Of course, if I go slow and I fight gravity, then I am getting some benefit. But generally, the movements that we're looking at are ones going away from gravity. So I can grab some weights and flex my arm, and then I bring it back to the start, then flex, and that's going to work my shoulder. Or I can have weights here to the side, and I'm going to abduct my shoulder, come out to the side and come down, out to the side and come down. Okay, and that would be abduction. Abduction. All right, even though we're adducting, we're going toward gravity. So we're going to actually focus in when we do that movement, going away from the body. Now, the shoulders also do horizontal flexion and extension, and that just means I come this way and then I come back. So horizontal flexion would be bringing my arms together, and horizontal extension would be coming away. So because it could be a lot on your shoulders when your arms are out, gravity is pulling down, many times we'll do those movements when we're on our back. So we could be laying on our back and bring our arms together, bring our arms together. All right, so we have flexion and we have extension. We have horizontal flexion, horizontal extension. We have abduction and we have adduction. So as a person pursuing fitness, you want to be a lifelong learner. Okay, so if you don't get it now or get it the first time, it's okay. Just giving you some exposure to that, planting some seeds, and then you can water it and let them grow as you gain more knowledge. Okay, let's look at the arm. So we can bend the arm and then we can straighten it. So this muscle, the bicep, bends it, which is flexion, and then the muscle behind the tricep extends. So flex and extend, flex and extend. And most of us know that because we'll say, flex your muscle, right? And so we know we have to bend it to get this muscle to pop out, our bicep. So flex, extend. flex, and extend. Now also, we can, at the elbow, we can turn our hand down and bring it up, down and up as well. And when we learn that, the bicep is involved in that, then you'll see people at a gym twisting, because they want to get the bicep muscle, which is partially responsible for that turning the hands up and down. And they have names: supination, pronation, supination, pronation. So give me supper. So supination, my hands are up. So those are some movements at the elbow joint. Now we're not going to do the wrist, but the wrist does similar flexion and extension as well. So let's look at the trunk, okay? We're going to lean forward, that's flexion, and coming back up is extension. Now you can just remember it that way as flexion and extension, or we can go past the midline and that's hyperextension, all right? But if you want to, just remember forward is flexion and this is extension. We can also do it where we go to the side. Lateral flexion, and I guess we could say lateral extension, okay? So that way we can do side motions. So many people, when they plan programs, they plan it based on movements. I want to make sure that I do something to the side, right? I want to make sure I do something where my arms come to the side and come forward, or they look at body parts, and we'll be looking at this in later videos. Okay, so also the trunk allows twisting, rotation. Okay, so there's a lot of things we can do there. So when I work out my clients, I make sure that they get flexion, extension, and rotation. And we'll go over the different movements to do that in a later video. All right, so when we look at the hips, we have flexion, we have extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. So I can do it with my leg bent or straight, right? Flex, extend, flex, extend, all right? And my hip also does internal and external rotation, right? So I want to make sure that you can see me. So inward, internal rotation, external rotation, internal rotation, external rotation. So there are exercises that work those movements. You don't see it a lot, but you can do movements where you're going in and out, in and out, in. All right. And it also goes away from the body, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. So when you go to the gym, like let's say Planet Fitness, the machines are designed to challenge you in these different movements. And so it will help you to understand, when you go to a gym and you see handles here and I've got to lift them up, that I'm doing flexion. Or the handles are here to the side and I'm coming in horizontal flexion, right? Or I'm sitting on the machines and they're bringing my legs together, adduction. Or they bring my legs apart, abduction. So the machines are designed to challenge those movements so that the body can get stronger. Abduction, adduction, internal rotation, external rotation, flexion, extension. Okay? All right, the knee basically just has, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. So when you go to a gym, you'll sit in a seat sometimes and they'll have a pad here and you choose a weight and then you extend and you extend and you extend. Or if they want you to flex, you can lie down. They have it where you stand and the weight, you start with a straight leg and you pull back and pull back, you're extending. So we're not gonna, we can go into the foot a little bit. I'll do 2 movements of the foot. It does more than that, but let's do 2 because they have weird names to them. They don't say flexion and extend, but your foot can flex and extend, flex and extend. But they call it dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. And that's just the names for those two movements, but you're basically flexing and extending. So that's a little introduction to joint movements. When you look at the textbooks in the class, you'll see these terms. And it's really good to get familiar with them and know that when you are exercising, that what you're exercising and what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. Later, we'll talk about what muscles do those movements, okay? And that will help you in planning your program as well, because you'll want to do those movements or include them in your program. All right, let's look at the plane. So there's three basic movement planes, and they're sagittal, frontal, and transverse. So basically, it's how the body is divided. I'm going to give you a very beginning, introduction to this. There's a lot of it on YouTube and Google articles. So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but I want to expose you to it. So sagittal would be like the line down the center, and they divide the body in two halves, right side and a left side. Okay, so if you can picture me divided in half, and it's a big, big sheet of paper that's lining me or dividing me rather in half, my movements have to be along that path. So forward and back, okay, forward and back. So sagittal movements are movements that go in this plane, or forward and back plane. So your squats would be in that plane, your flexion would be in that plane, your lunges are there if you're on the floor and you're doing crunches. So anything that's forward and back, all right, flexing at the hip and then extending back, all right, flexing my knee and then extending, right? Those are all in the sagittal plane, and most movements that we do are in that plane. Then we have the frontal plane, also called the coronal plane, all right, which divides the body in a front and a back. Okay, so it divides it this way. So these are sideways movements. So my abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, jumping jacks. All right, so these are movements like this. I go to the side, I go to the side. Okay, that's frontal plane. So we have movements that take us forward and back. We have movements that take us side to side. And the last one is kind of easy. It divides the body in the top and the bottom, and that is the transverse plane, and that's rotation. Okay, so we want to go across the body. All right, so doing this movement would be transverse. Rotation would be transverse. Internal and external rotation with the hip. Internal and external rotation with the shoulder, So those movements are in the transverse plane. So sagittal, forward and back, frontal, side to side, transverse, rotation, rotation. And it's good to include different planes in your workout, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more on different exercises to do that, but I'll just show you with a lunge. Okay, so if I want sagittal plane, I can just lunge like this. Okay, just lunge forward and back. Knee is going forward and back. If I want to be in the frontal plane, I can lunge like this. Lunge side to side, right? And if I want to be in the transverse plane, then I can do a curtsy lunge. So, all right, so there's a little rotation, a little rotation. So that's an example of transverse, right? Sagittal and frontal. We can do it with the arms as well. So this is sagittal, right? This is frontal, and this would be transverse. So that is all I have for you for this video. Hopefully you were able to benefit, and in subsequent videos, we'll talk some more about fitness.